All right. All right, it is 3 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and dive in. Of course, most of you guys are in my MAPS coaching schedule, so you know who I am. And this is part 2 of a 2-part series we started last week around really, how to get things done, how to streamline what you're doing, how to streamline what your admin doing, how to leverage, and how to communicate with one another. So for anybody that wasn't on last week's call, if you need it, we did record it, and you can if you didn't get an email of it, you can put it in the chat box that you need that, and then mine will go ahead and share that with you. We don't always record the Tuesdays. Last Tuesday and this Tuesday we are, so welcome. And then we are going to, and then today we're going to take a little bit about, of the things that we worked on last week, and we're going to say, okay, how do we actively implement those pieces? Okay. So is there, for those of you that were on the call last week, or maybe you watched the recording, is there anything that came up that you're like, hey, I definitely, used it this week and that was a value, or, based on that, this is the question, or this is the answer that I'd like to have, right? This is maybe a gap, or what I'd like to have happen today. So any questions or comments based on what we did last week, or what you would love to see happen this week? Okay, you guys are all muted. Feel free to type in the chat box. If you do that, we can, or if you want to come off your camera, you can do that. Or if you type in the chat box, then mine will go ahead and read your questions out loud. So again, today it is training, and I want to make sure that you have opportunity to ask questions throughout as well. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. So a couple of things that we're going to look at today is job description. Do you have a job description for yourself? Do you have a job description for whoever you're working with? Now, this could be an admin, a showing partner, a buyer's agent. And does it truly fit what that job is, right? So a lot of times, and we should all, right, have you taken career visioning and then 30, 60, 90 and success through others? Those we want to make sure. Sometimes what happens is we pull those job descriptions and we go, all right, this is the job description. Well, have you taken time to make edits and make sure that it truly fits the job? And are you utilizing that? So like, you utilize that whenever you make an offer. Are you also utilizing it throughout to say, hey, we've nailed this, or hey, we want to make adjustments to this, or right? Are we very clear on what our job description is? Whose role is what? So that's going to be the first thing that I would say. So number one, make certain that you have true job descriptions. And then have you walked through a 30, 60, 90 training? So we're going to look at both of these if we have time toward the end. And I want you to be thinking, even in a new role. So for instance, let's say that you have somebody that's been with you for a long time, and they're now moving from this type of admin to this type of admin, or this buyer's agent to that buyer's agent. Anytime there's a new job, are you now going, okay, let's go back through the 30, 60, 90 training. What are the standards? What are the expectations by day 30, by day 60, by day 90? One of the things that I heard a long time ago, and I thought it was awesome, the cool part about the 30, 60, 90, that training process is every day are they owning at least 1% of that job? Are you allowing them to, right? Or you're showing them, you're teaching them, you're answering questions, and then you're letting them run with that. And depending on the job, you may not be the one training them, right? And maybe go to this, come talk to me, that piece. And yet, are you operating through that 30, 60, 90? So again, toward the end of today's call, as long as we have time, we're going to pull up and look at what that would look like. And then success through others. So again, we talked about the leverage series. You're going to be very familiar with this. And yet if you're thinking about hiring, if you've hired or you're thinking about hiring, this is something we are very lucky at Keller Williams to have the ability for somebody to teach us how to hire. And yet so often we forget that it is learning a new skill. So however long it took you to be an amazing listing agent and amazing buyer's agent, we've got to put that same work into the skill of hiring, leading, and training others, right? So success through others is, what's their wealth path with you? It's, yes, there's what can I make? And yet, do you have a wealth path of, do they have abilities to maybe buy investment properties with you one day? Do they have an ability to grow through profit share? How are you going to continually let them, what's their growth path? Talent will leave you if they don't have a growth path. Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that's part of the leverage series, right? And the great part, COVID's brought us some negative stuff and it's brought us some positive things, because now we're able to take the whole career visioning process online. Are you taking advantage of this? If you're thinking about hiring, or you've hired and you're like, oh, I'm not a master at this. And by the way, most of us aren't masters at this. Most people, even if they've hired tens and 20s and hundreds of people, they're still going through this process. Have you went? Are you using the systems, right? So I just wanted to make sure that we really touched on that. There is, on Olivia's approach, I posted a upcoming training for career visioning. If you're thinking of hiring, be in that course. And then when we look at your growth plan, do you have that in your growth plan? Probably once a quarter, right? Like how impactful do you want this to be, right? So just thought process. Then daily, weekly meetings. Now, in previous Tuesdays, we've talked about how do we set up our daily one-on-ones with our admin? How do we set up our weekly? A lot of times we think admin, and it could be our selling partner, our transaction coordinator, our buyer's agents. Are we having daily, weekly meetings, and are we making those the cornerstone of our business? Sometimes we got to slow down to speed up. Sometimes people hear that and they go, I don't have time to slow down. Whoa. Are we making the plan? Are we walking into that meeting with the admin going, okay, I know what I'm going to report to you. And does your admin or buyer's agent or whoever that you're working with, do they know what they're going to report, right? What are the things that we're going to talk about? How much time do we have so that everybody's coming to that fully prepared? There's a book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, that's really great on how to set these up. Again, and I'm just kind of touching based on some stuff because we went a lot deeper last week, and then we're going to come back, and then I'll come back in and I'll answer, any questions, or we can look at some of the specifics that we can set up. Okay. And again, if you have questions or something that you want to dive deeper in, feel free to unmute yourself, and we'll jump into that piece. Now, the urgency addiction. Now, this is the other challenge that we run into. Mon, will you post the urgency addiction assessment in our group chat?
All right, let me do that.
Thank you.
Okay.
And for any, I think everybody on here for the most part knows, but this is Mon. He is my amazing cyberbacker. He makes all the things on the back end work. I'm super blessed to have him. One of the, and some of you, like last Thursday, we looked at a little bit on the urgency addiction, and this Thursday, we're actually going to look at, okay, if we have this, if everything's urgent, how do we let go of the urgent and move into the important, right? So once that gets in the chat box, if you haven't taken that assessment, if you don't know where you are, go ahead and take that assessment. And we're going to come back and we're going to talk about how do we go from there to here. Mon, will you just let me know when it's in that chat box?
All right, Coach. I'm just getting the link now.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we're going to do that in just a second. Now, what we are going to go ahead and go into the decision tree, and then we're going to go back. So we talked about letting our admin own their position, letting our buyer's agent, whoever it is, right, are they owning the decision? Sometimes what gets in the way is we're not sure where to let them own it versus where to say, okay, well, they don't know how to do that yet. So in Fierce Conversations, we learn about the decision tree. So I want you to be thinking about, and you can sit down with your admin or go through your job descriptions, go through their 30, 60, 90, and let them know which decisions they can make and how. So a leaf decision, this is something you can make the decision and act on it. There's no need to report the action that you took. You just did it, right? Then you've got the branch decision. Okay, this is a branch decision. You got to make the decision, you act on it, and yet you report it back to me on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, right? Then you've got the trunk decision. You can make the decision and yet check in with me before taking action, okay? And then you've got the root decision. These decisions are made with input for many people, or are decisions and actions reserved for the leader, right? Now, someone can be delegated a responsibility at 4 different levels of the decision tree. Each level has a clear, concise definition of what is expected for that project and set guidelines on how to interact with the leader. So when you're delegating tasks or an entire, like, look, these are the things that I want you to do, or this is the end result that I'd like, have you communicated what they need to come back and ask you, right? So for instance, we used this example last week, and let's say that you are wanting buy me a new computer. Well, where are they on that tree, right? A leaf is go get the information, come back and tell me about it, right? Then you've got the branch and the trunk. You might say, here, go do this. And where I want you to get back with me on is you can make the decision on what we're going to buy. And let's say it's a branch decision. You can make the decision and you can act on it up to $2,000, right? If it's going to cost more than that, then we need to have another conversation. Are we going through and letting them understand what, this is the task, and how do you need to communicate back to this? That way you don't have somebody coming back and asking you every 5 minutes, can we do this or can we do this? Well, where is that piece on the decision tree, right? This allows you to start doing effective delegation and relieve some of the headaches that you have. An example of, so you might pull out your personalized job description. In there, you're going to have key areas of accountability and tasks. Go down each one of those and say, for the next 30 days, or right until we meet again, this is a leaf decision, a branch decision, a trunk decision. And then when you're updating, you can say, hey, you know what? You've got this. You own this now. You don't have to, that's now a trunk, that's now a leaf decision. You run with that. You don't have to report it to me. Or I still want to know, okay, so that's a branch decision. Any questions around how you can utilize this, or comments around how you can utilize this with anybody that you are delegating or leveraging to? Okay. So again, for this to work, you've got to discuss clear expectations with your partner and empower them to make good decisions based on specific written criteria, right? So this is where happy delegating comes in, right? So do we know these pieces? Okay. You might even get into a habit that when you're writing out or saying, hey, these are the things that I want you to do, are you saying in your head, right, this is when I want you to report back, this is how to report back, that type of thing, okay? So we're looking at the tree decisions. Now, the next piece, this is something that we used to utilize a lot with Recruit Select. It's an amazing model, though. I'm going to show you this growth control relationship and the closed loop training model. Some of you have, we've shared this before, and yet until you start using it, I think there's a tendency to pull back. So we look at, Keller Williams, we are a business, a system of models. Well, this is a model that we use to guide the training of our new people. Because most times we've gone to great lengths to create a training program that's going to enable success. And our intent is to get to where that person can become a self-managed individual. So we've got to understand this growth control relationship. So think about this as a 90-day window. Now, depending on, right, some things take longer than others, but during that growth, so if you look at this, it's 30 days, 60 days, 100 days. So while they're growing, you have a lot of management control, right? They're starting to take more of that. There's a learning curve, and then your control becomes less. So you understand, right, the ultimate goal of your training and how this model reflects how you can achieve that goal. Now, this goes right with or right alongside that fierce conversation leaf model component, because the more decisions that can become branch and trunk decisions, you are well on your way to having a self-managed individual in that role in your business. Now, in addition to these two pieces, we use a closed loop training model. I want you to think about coaching. So again, most of you guys are in my MAPS coaching schedule. We use this model. You may not have been aware of it, and yet you're going to notice this, right? And this model is not for getting after the first 100 days. It is used to manage achievements and continuous learning going forward for as long as, right, you have you have somebody that's working with you. So you have somebody that comes, you've got a 30, 60, 90. That's our new plan. We give them input, new materials, like here, we're going to train you on this. This is what you're going to do. They're going to take action on those pieces, and you're going to get some type of output, some type of results, right? And then we're going to look at feedback, what happened. So if you think about it, so like when we're coaching together, okay, we're going to do a get your net worth tracker together. So we talk about it, you start inputting, we new material, new concepts, you take action, we look at the output. What is the result? What happened? Based on that, based on the result, we look at feedback. Okay, what happened? Well, I didn't finish it, or I had this question. Okay, awesome. So we evaluate it. What did we miss? What do we need to do? What has to happen? What do you need to, and then we reinforce. So then we decide, are we going to stop? Are we going to modify? Are we going to continue? Based on that, now we have a new plan. So when we look at those weekly trainings, those weekly meetings with our, admin person or a buyer's agent, whoever you're leveraging or delegating to, are you thinking closed loop training model, right? We did this. It's the action, output, feedback, evaluate, reinforce, and keep going forward. Now, sometimes a new plan is as simple as, all right, awesome. So you nailed that piece. Keep doing that, right? And yet we're just continually in that closed loop training. So, all right, any questions around this piece? Or you might say, like, is there an example of something maybe you've done that you would like me to help? How would we walk that particular piece through a closed loop training model? Nothing? Tanya?
I have a question. Is there something else on the screen I'm supposed to be seeing?
Are you, well, that would be great. I don't know what you're seeing. Are you seeing something that says closed loop training model?
I'm seeing the pictures of everyone on here, and then I see Zoom. So I don't see anything that says closed loop training model.
Oh, does anybody else? You should see.
I'm seeing it. It says closed loop training model and it's 1 through 7.
Yes.
If
Okay.
you're viewing on your cell phone, you'll have to like go to the second slide.
I'm not. I'm on
Swipe
the.
over.
Click on, I think.
Oh, wait a second. I found something by clicking.
All right. You got it? You see it now?
Well, I see it. It's really tiny.
Okay, so you're probably keep clicking. So you have like above maybe the pictures, you're going to have like a small dash, a smaller box, 2 boxes, and 4 boxes. Have you clicked on each one of those?
It's all right.
No,
It's
no,
just-
well, then last thing, and let's see if this works, and then we'll move on. But on your, go back to your, like the bottom of your computer where it has the Zoom icon, click on that and see if it doesn't bring this up large.
Okay.
Did it?
Yes, it did.
Okay, awesome. And I know that because I've had that same feeling during a Zoom call. So, all right, perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, so while we're right here, kind of at a stop or a question, any thoughts, comments, questions around the models that we looked at before we go back into the urgency addiction piece? Okay. All right. So, okay. So let's go ahead. If you haven't already, go into the chat box, click on that, and answer that assessment. Now, for those of you that were on the call last Thursday, at the very end, we did this, but we've changed forms. So this time you don't have to worry about submitting and not having it. And then once you've completed it, this doesn't take very long. And yet once you've completed it, and like I said, again, some of you may have already done this, go ahead and give me a thumbs up or make a comment in the chat box just so that I know we're ready to move to the next piece. All right. Has everybody walked through that, or are you still working on it? Okay, we got Tanya. Andy, do you have it? You're muted.
It was filling out itself. And I don't know if that's because I already did it. I mean, I remember my score was off the charts, 48.
Yeah. As you update, it'll give you a number. So, okay, we're perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else need any more time? Think we're good. Okay. Okay. So the urgency addiction, and again, on Thursday, we're going to get further into this. And yet I wanted to bring this up because when we're looking at our leverage, because whether we're looking to manage our boss or we are looking to the leverage and that piece, a lot of times within this, we go, oh, well, if only I had somebody else to delegate stuff to. Maybe not. Now, there are times when, right, it's time. Like, are we on the trajectory? It is time to bring somebody in to leverage those pieces too. And that's typically somewhere around that 30 units, right? Are we on track to do that 30 units in 12 months, 30 plus? Okay. And yet what I'm finding is a lot of times it's more about staying in urgency. We're doing a lot of things that don't actually get us results. And we think, oh, if we bring this other person in, well, the challenge is now we're going to start shoving our urgency stuff at them, and it's still a whirlwind. So we want to make sure that we are, are these things that are absolutely going to benefit our business in the now? Because if you think about it, there's lots of things that people do that's amazing. It's not necessary for where we are right this second. So for instance, there was somebody on stage at family reunion maybe, and they were talking about a concierge service. Well, it sounds amazing. They were doing hundreds of units in an area like New York where their price point was, $1 million+ dollars. Well, guess what? We're probably not there yet. So that's not a service that we provide. So again, are we just doing things to fill in that urgency addiction? So if we come all the way back to what's the foundational pieces, do we have our, and we'll kind of look at that with that 36 touch, but I'm going to show, so if we look at, well, let me ask you this. We heard Andy shared with us who in here scored higher than a 40? You can just unmute yourself and say
Ah.
Mom.
I got 48.
48.
Yeah.
All right. Who else?
Where was the total score shown?
It should show at the top as you put the information in. It'll should give you an actual number. Somebody else. Let's see here. Let's see if it'll let me pull it up. So at the very top of the urgency index, it'll have your name, and then on the right, it'll say total score. Did that show up for you, Paul?
Unfortunately, I was a 53.
53. Oh, hi. Sorry, Tanya. I didn't realize that I was on yours. So that would be the other thing. If you, when you made it or when you pulled it, you want to, open it in your Google Drive, or else that may have been what happened, Andy, with you, is somebody else was filling it out. So yeah, so make sure you save a copy and then input yours. But yeah, so right here, Tanya, I thought I was showing a blank one, but it's yours. So you're a 53. So, all right. Anybody else on here want to share your number? Did anybody on here show lower than a 25? We'll even take it in the chat box. Okay. So this is, what does that mean? So in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is an amazing one for, we're reading it, but if you're hiring or looking to hire or make any leverage, this is an amazing piece for you and your admin or leverage person to dig into. Habit 3 is first things first. That is one of the hardest things for us to do because of urgency. Okay, so we have you take this urgency index. We see where you are, and this is your, how do we rank this, right? So 0 to 25, you have a low urgency mindset. 26 to 45, you have a strong urgency mindset. 46 plus, you have an urgency addiction. So what do we now know about Tanya? Not to pick on her. Right, there's an urgency addiction. So why does that matter? If you're like most people, you either have an urgency addiction or you're developing one. It is a self-destructive behavior. Part of this comes because busyness has become a status symbol. Like a century ago, it was how much leisure time you have. Now it's like a badge of honor when I'm busy, right? It's the it's how we signal dedication to our job and leadership potential, right? So we start thinking that's the best way. So we want to actually start looking at shifting our paradigm. So when we shift that paradigm, it's going to look more like and I'm going to draw this out, and I want you to draw this out. So in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, there's 4 quadrants. We've got urgent, not urgent, not important, and important. Keller Williams, we talk about the 80-20 rule, right? So what you may identify here is how much time you're spending in that 80%, which is not important, and urgent. So if we look at it, this is the way the quadrants work. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. Now Covey named each one of these. We have the procrastinator. We have the prioritizer. We have the yes man, woe man, and we have the slacker. Now, at times, we're going to live in every one of these quadrants. What we want to make sure is where are we spending the majority of our time. So the procrastinator, they deal with crisis, emergency meetings, last minute deadlines, unforeseen events. Not to pick on any one person, because I've said it too, it's, well, I had to because so-and-so, right? Like there's always these, that's right. Then you have the yes man. There's needless interruptions, unnecessary reports, irrelevant meetings, other people's minor issues, unimportant email tasks, etc. And then you have the slacker. That's trivial work, avoidance of activities, excessive relaxation, time wasters, and gossip. Now, where we want to spend the majority of our time is the prioritizer. Proactive work, high impact goals, creative thinking, planning and prevention, relationship building, and learning and renewal. So he named these off of the overriding characteristics of each one. People who live in quadrant 1, this is the result of spending too much time here includes stress and anxiety, feeling burnt out, and mediocre performance. Anybody ever feel that way, right? That one is not, you don't even have to raise your hand, right? Now, the yes man or woman, that's the term for those that live in quadrant 3. They have a hard time saying no to anything that is urgent or popular, resulting in staying incredibly busy while getting nothing of importance done, or not as much of importance as it could happen, right? Then you have quadrant 4, the slacker. Anything done to excess falls into quadrant 4. So yes, chilling out, watching a movie, that is part of a healthy lifestyle. It might be the second, third, fourth movie in a row that may not be, right? That may be where that comes in. Quadrant 2, this is the quadrant of quality. This is where the prioritizer lives. Now, on average, most of us only spend 31% of our time here. When we spend time in quadrant 2, this is where we take time to fix the screen instead of continually swatting the flies. So the key to spending more time in quadrant 2 is to reduce the amount of time you spend in 3, which is the quadrant of deception. Because it's urgent and not important, right? It's that quadrant of deception. So we want to make sure when we are, we know probably immediately how this applies to us. How does it apply when we are managing somebody? Or maybe it's when it's, there's admin that listen to this call, and maybe admin on it. When you think about your boss, right? Are they yes, 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 yes? Are you going, this might be something to share with them in a team meeting and go, okay, how do we, if I see you moving towards something that may be an irrelevant meeting, or you didn't need to do it, how do I approach you about this so that we have, right, like respectfully, right? You might still choose to do it, but I've at least, hey, have you thought about this? Because there's another way that we could do this, right? The remedy to quadrant 3 is to start saying no. Say no to responding immediately to every email or text that comes your way. Say no to serving on the community board when you might be neglecting your family or your health. Say no to filling out that report no one reads. The key to saying no is to have a deeper yes burning inside of you. So we're going to look at that later. This is the interesting thing I did want to. So the key to spending more time in priority 2 is to reduce the amount of time in quadrant 3 by saying no. If you're taking notes, write this down. Quadrant 3 seems important because it's urgent and thus it tricks us. When time is scarce, we go through what psychologists call tunneling, meaning we can only concentrate on the most immediate, often low value tasks. Again, if I go back to when we look at, if we review your 411 or things like that, a lot of times, well, I didn't do it this week, I was too busy. That's when you need to do it. The urgency mode causes us to lose about 13 IQ points. I don't know about you. I don't have 13 IQ points to lose, right? That's what urgency does to us. So we want to start, are we saying no when we're creating what we want our admin to do? Are we going, whoa, not important and it's not urgent. Nope, let's. And in the whirlwind, sometimes it is hard to say that. And so we want to keep coming back to that. Okay. Any thoughts, comments when we look at where you scored and how do we move out of that, get rid of that urgency addiction? It can be for you working with somebody to leverage stuff out. Any thoughts around this piece?
So I think that I just have to start to get into the habit of staying in that second quadrant. Sorry, that's my dog. And not saying yes to everything, you know, because that's what I do. And not
That's what you used to do.
that's
What
what
you used to do. Now and make a decision. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
And if I can get into the habit, then I'll know how to make sure, shush, if I have someone that I can keep the habit. I'm going to mute.
All right. All right. Thank you, Andy. Who else? Thought? Question?
Not really a question. I just like the way it's laid out. It certainly grounds for a lot of thought.
Yeah. It's always, and I appreciate you sharing that, Paul, because it's the interesting thing about stuff like this. It's not that it's necessarily new for us, right? It's just maybe a different way of looking at it or going, that's what's happening. Yeah.
I like the way they're grouped together. You know, the different activities or lack thereof or decisions that you make, the way that it's in the quadrant groups them in a way that I hadn't seen before. And it's interesting characteristics of everybody's done everything.
I'm sorry.
Not seeing it presented like that.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. All right. Okay. So we know where we stand. We know that we're going to start saying no to things. What is it? I think in the one thing, or Gary talks about, for every yes, you should be giving 1,000 no's. Like being a yes man is not where we want to be. And we want to be able to say yes to the things that are truly important, not the things that just are, because we've fallen into that pattern. Okay. So the delegation exercise. So when we look at this delegation exercise, I want you to be thinking about going through your stuff first. Okay. So, and this works in so if you're an admin, your first thought might be, well, I'm the one that gets delegated to. Sure. And is this the best use of your time, or would you be better finding somebody else to delegate for, or creating a system around it, or getting rid of it? Now, obviously, I don't mean like putting it in the desk, but like, where is this, right? Kind of going back to that urgency. Is this something that we really need to do? So delegation. So ask yourself, what would be the best use of your time? For many of us, right, it's lead generation. It's going on an appointment, script and role play, negotiating contracts. Number 2, what activity or responsibility is no longer the best use of my time? So for instance, this is important if you're really good at it. We tend to not like to give up stuff that we're really good at. And so then we get back into our admin's way. I'm good at it, or I like it. Yes. And is it the best and highest use of your time? Now, keep in mind, so I had a sister-in-law, she loved to mow. High producer. And so she and I were talking about it one day, and I said, that's not the best use of your time, so that when you can be home, you can be home. The more we talked about it, she goes, no, it's my relaxing. I get on the riding line more. I have a beer. Okay. Then it is the best use of her time because that's how she relaxes, right? Now, if that got in the way of her spending, like, because that's definitely not one-on-one time for me, but like, if that got in the way of something more important for her to relax, then we want to give that up. And what's the best use of the time, right? To whom would you like to give this responsibility? So go through your list, right? Who would you like to give this responsibility? Lots of times we don't think about those in our household. We think admin, we think transaction coordinator, all of those are yes. And do you have, are you looking to be stewardship? Maybe you've got younger kids. Are you looking to do stewardship, leadership, right? So maybe you go, hey, look, on Mondays and Tuesdays, you're responsible for the cooking. Think back to what we looked at last week when Covey had his 7-year-old son start being in charge of mowing the grass. He walked it through a training process. Like, there was a whole thing, and yet, is there things that you need to give up responsibility for because somebody else needs that learning piece? And then at what level? Is this going to be a leaf decision, a branch, or a trunk decision? By when, and how much of your time will this free up? So that would be a great exercise to go through. For you to really go, okay, where do I need to be? Because delegation is not simply a means of increasing productivity. It's a means of actually multiplying it, right? So where do we need to delegate? Now, this is the other piece, gainers and drainers. Make an energy drainer list. And then, which ones can you eliminate within the next 30 days?
Can you give an example?
Of the drainer or gainer?
Drainer.
Drainer. Okay. So I'll share. In my real estate business, an energy drainer for me is if a client calls in and asks for something. Now, not because, like, I don't resent them for calling in. I go, oh, I should have already told them that. I should have already, whatever, right? Now, we're not going to make them all go away, right? And yet that was, so on my, I used to have a list in my calendar or my day planner, and it said, never do again. Every time I did something that aggravated me, I would put it on my never do again list. What that let me know is I need to create a system around this. Or I need to put it on, delegate it to somebody, or I needed to rephrase or change, shift my paradigm of how I was looking at that. So, yeah, anything, if maybe you have a client that drains your energy, they might need to go on that list to be eliminated in the next 30 days. So we go, okay, we're going to look at, can we get them under contract? How can I maybe see them from a different angle, talk to them differently, or do I need to get them out of my life? So energy drainer, I do not like to clean. Now I'll get if I clean, I'll get a big thing and I'll go through and I love to move stuff. That's an energy drainer. I need a housekeeper, right? Things like that. Does that help? Okay. Now, and then the energy gainer list. So, whether it's training your, Andy, I know like you like to train your dogs. Is that an energy gainer? Reading a book, going for a run. What is your energy gainer list? And which ones can you implement within the next 30 days? So going through your office. So Tanya, right? I know you love looking at numbers, putting them together, maybe not so much, right? Like you like that they tell a story. So now you've put somebody in place, they're going to do that. So they tell you the story. Now you've just gotten rid of that energy drainer. You're still going to get the result. You still right where we're going to go. And yet that would be what that looks like. Okay. All right. And then this piece right here. Ask yourself, what am I holding on to? What am I holding on to? We tend to do that. I can't, like, I've done that to mine before, and more than once, I'm sure. We'll have a conversation. He'll put something together, and then I'm going da 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 da. And sometimes he stops me, and sometimes I stop myself to go, I don't know why I'm telling you how to do that. Like, you managed to do this whole thing without me, and better than I've been able to do. Why am I putting in my, like, obviously, yes, whatever, but I don't need to get in the middle of it. Let me get out of that. So, what am I holding on to? And is there a valid reason to do so? Usually the answer is no. And you may just not know how to set it up correctly so they get the same experience, right? And then tell people where they are free to play and raise the level of personal accountability. And then always, always, always celebrate the progression from trunk to branch, branch to leaf. Okay. So when they start like, woohoo, you've got that, right? Make sure that you're celebrating and acknowledging that. I'm going to do some takeaways and ahas. I'd love to hear from everybody that's on the call. So be ready to unmute yourself and share. Before we do that, I can't remember if I shared this on the last call, so I wanted to make sure. These are just, there's lots more books to read. Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Stephanie Winston, The Organized Executive. David Allen, Getting Things Done. He's another great one. For courses, The Perfect Real Estate Assistant with Monica Reynolds. You also might be, depending on like when you make your hire, you might be looking at, hiring a MAPS coach to work with your admin, right? So keep that in mind. Sometimes we're not the best person to lead that role, right? And that's okay, right? So we leverage it, right? So just keep those pieces in mind. Okay, so with that said, I want to hear a takeaway, an aha, something, was it valuable for you to be on this call for the last hour? What are you going to implement? That type of thing. So who's going to go first?
The classification of the different behaviors that we have, putting a name to them with an example, and then ranking them in that quadrant, plus labeling the levels of decisions and whether it rotates back to you or they grow themselves into being able to do it by themselves like a leaf. And Perfect. There are other things that'll never be a leaf.
That's right. Absolutely. Perfect. Love that. All right. Awesome. Thank you, Paul. Who's next?
What am I holding on to? And that's my micromanagement. I do that a lot with customers. I try to micromanage every end of their transaction. I don't.
Yeah. And sometimes that comes back to that yes man. Like I want to be the hero. I want to, so yeah, that's it. Yeah. So what am I holding on to? They're grown-ups. We're working with great people. Love that. Okay. All right. Who's next?
I like the idea of making a list of energy drainer, an energy drainer list. because a lot of the time when we think of things that are draining our energy or we get stressed about, we don't do anything with it. We just let it kind of irritate us or take control of us and our lives. And by maybe, jotting it down and looking at it, you see it, and can maybe just let it go or figure out what you need to do with it next.
Absolutely. It's being proactive, right? We're looking at it and going, oh, well, that wasn't like, why am I being, or, okay, that is, what can I do around that? Love that. Okay, perfect. Thanks for sharing that. All right. Who's next?
I will go. I need to stay out of quadrant 1 because I am a procrastinator, and then it becomes urgent. And I'm going to intentionally spend more time in quadrant 2.
Yay.
And
Love
you
it.
will help me. You'll have to nudge me every week.
That's I'm gonna empower you to fill on what you just said, right? That's to hold you accountable to that, because you did amazing, right? Like yesterday, no business plan part 1. Today, business plan part 1.
Procrastinate, urgency, because you told me I could not cancel my call.
That's right. So that's one of the things, though. So we're going to look at one of the Thursdays upcoming. We're going to look at taking our business plan and how do we actually utilize that in a 411. So we're prioritizing and putting that in our schedule and going, well, okay, it's going to take this long. When do I need to put it in my schedule? Because that's usually where we fall out. Okay, love that. All right, we've got Tanya, Noel, if you'd like to share, and Marcia and Catherine.
Tanya put in the chat.
Okay.
To put items into categories of decision levels, what I can do versus what the rainmaker needs, what needs rainmaker's decision.
Perfect. Love it. And last week, that kind of makes last week we came up with a 5-step, right? Here are the 5 steps that you've taken something to your rainmaker. Hey, this is the way that we could be done. Love that. Okay. What about you, Amanda Knight? Must be on mute or in a place that she can't share. And then Marcia or Catherine, anything that you guys want to share before we jump off of here today?
Marcia's major energy drainer took her away. So that's her response.
That's okay. Okay. All right. Anybody else? All right. So what we do know is learning something without taking action on it. It's the definition of entertaining. And I loved spending the time with you guys today, and I'm not that great of an entertainer. So you have, we're not looking to implement everything, right? But you had an aha today. You had something that you learned. Start implementing it this week, right? Just move forward on it. And then we'll keep doing these Tuesday calls. So that, again, it's really about, are we maximizing our time? So sometimes, we go, well, I don't want to spend an hour doing that. But if this hour gives us back 5, 6, 10 hours, that's right. That's where what we're utilizing this for. So, all right. With that, I will say peace. That is my time. If you guys need anything, call me, text me, email. Have an amazing, amazing rest of your week.